Just when the world expected another strike, Donald Trump shocked everyone by canceling the second wave of attacks on Venezuela. What made him change his mind, and what does this mean for global politics? Let's break it down. Trump says he's canceled second wave of attacks on Venezuela. In a dramatic development in U.S.-Venezuela relations, President Donald Trump announced that he has canceled a planned second wave of attacks on Venezuela, declaring that improved cooperation from Caracas made further military action unnecessary. The decision marks a notable shift in the pace and tone of U.S. policy toward the South American nation after recent military involvement. Trump's statement, posted on his social media platform Truth Social early Friday, came after a tumultuous period in Venezuela that saw an unprecedented U.S. military operation in late December. That operation resulted in the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, who were taken into U.S. custody on narcotics and terrorism-related charges. The initial incursion, highly controversial and without prior notification to Congress, sparked international attention and raised questions about U.S. interventionism in the Western Hemisphere. In his post, Trump asserted that Venezuela had begun cooperating with the United States, especially in ways that served mutual interests. He highlighted in particular the release of a large number of political prisoners, which the Venezuelan government described as gestures aimed at seeking peace. Trump called the release a very important and smart gesture, and said this cooperation formed the basis of his decision to call off what he described as a previously expected second wave of attacks. Diplomatic and economic rationale. According to Trump, the United States and Venezuela were now working well together, especially regarding efforts to rebuild Venezuela's oil and gas infrastructure in a bigger, better and more modern form. He also said he would meet at the White House with American oil executives who he said would invest at least $100 billion into Venezuela's energy sector, a striking turn toward economic engagement following violent confrontation. The president emphasized that while he was canceling further strikes, this did not equate to a complete military disengagement. He clarified that U.S. naval forces and ships in the Caribbean would remain in position for safety and security purposes, suggesting a continued show of force even as direct combat operations were paused. Political prisoners and seeking peace. The release of political prisoners was a key element in Trump's justification. International human rights groups and reports indicate that several political detainees, including foreign nationals, such as Spanish and Colombian citizens, were freed as part of this peace gesture. These releases were portrayed by U.S. and Venezuelan officials alike as steps toward de-escalation after months of political unrest and a U.S. military buildup. This narrative of cooperation contrasts sharply with the earlier trajectory of U.S.-Venezuela relations, which had deteriorated over years of sanctions, diplomatic friction, and mutual accusations. The Trump administration had labeled key elements of the Venezuelan regime as criminal or even terrorist in nature, citing alleged ties to narcotics trafficking and other illicit activity. Ongoing U.S. strategic interests. Even as he announced the cancellation of the military plan, Trump's comments made clear that the United States maintained significant strategic interests in Venezuela, particularly in the energy sector. Venezuela, home to some of the world's largest proven oil reserves, has long been a focal point of international energy politics. Trump's emphasis on rebuilding and modernizing the country's oil infrastructure, and facilitating major investments by U.S. oil companies, underscores this priority. The decision to halt another round of military strikes could also reflect broader geopolitical calculations. On the one hand, granting a degree of cooperation from Venezuela's interim authorities offers Washington a chance to shape outcomes through economic influence rather than direct conflict. On the other hand, keeping military assets in place maintains leverage over a volatile situation and signals that Washington is still prepared to act if necessary. International response and skepticism reactions to the announcement have been mixed. Supporters of Trump's approach view the cancellation as a pragmatic recognition that cooperation and economic engagement can achieve what military force alone cannot. Critics, however, argue that the original military operation and the threat of subsequent attacks represented an unlawful and aggressive use of force that lacked the consent of Congress and violated international norms. Some analysts also question whether the cooperation Trump cites is genuine or the result of coercion under military pressure. Furthermore, there are concerns in certain diplomatic circles about what continued U.S. naval presence near Venezuela might mean for regional stability, especially given the tense history between the United States and other Latin American nations. Many countries in the region have historically opposed foreign interventions in sovereign affairs, and U.S. military actions risk reigniting those sensitivities. The future of Venezuela-U.S. relations. Looking ahead, the trajectory of U.S.-Venezuela relations remains uncertain. Trump's shift to emphasize economic cooperation and investment could open a new chapter in bilateral relations, potentially fostering reconstruction and economic activity that benefits Venezuelans. However, this pivot also raises questions about sovereignty, U.S. influence, and the extent to which economic leverage might replace direct military action as the primary tool of American foreign policy. The political landscape in Venezuela itself is deeply fractured. Maduro's capture and removal from power have not resolved internal divisions, and interim leadership figures continue to struggle for legitimacy and control. Meanwhile, opposition groups, symbolized by leaders such as Maria Corina Machado, seek stronger backing from international actors, including the United States, even as Washington calibrates its level of engagement. In sum, Trump's cancellation of a second wave of attacks on Venezuela reflects a complex interplay between military strategy, diplomatic signaling, and economic incentives. Whether this move leads to durable peace and stability, or simply a temporary lull in escalating tensions, will depend on how both nations navigate the political, economic, and social challenges that lie ahead. If you found this update helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a major story. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.